Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with Seemantini Godpoli, who is the Chief Digital and Information Officer of Lowe, as well as Executive Vice President. Seemantini, good to see you.
Great to be here, Diane. Thank you for having me.
I have to start first, great to see you, but when I think about people in your role, I think about, having to be anti-theft, cybersecurity, talent, all the issues that must keep you up at night. Maybe they don't, but tell me what the biggest challenges are of your job.
And, you're right. I mean, as a Chief Digital and Information Officer, there is a tremendous amount of product development we do to bring great experiences to our customers and associates. And that's just a delightful part of my job. At the same time, you're absolutely right. You do have to worry about cybersecurity, theft, and both these issues, as you know, across the retail industry and across overall all Fortune 500 companies. This definitely, both of them are big issues. And, Dan, more than keeping me up at night, we have tremendously talented team. And I think our goal is always to preparedness. How do we make sure we are ready for the situation? And how do we make sure that we build our technology ground up in such a way that we can combat some of these threats that we are talking about? What keeps me up at night, frankly, Diane, is not these specific problems, but I always keep thinking about, making sure we are retaining the right talent. Because if you retain the right talent, engage the right talent, if they are really into Lowe and engaged in Lowe, then I feel like there is no problem big enough for us. But that's really something that I keep thinking about.
It's an excellent point. I think talent is always the starting and end point of all of these conversations. But let me unpack. This is a year where we've seen incredible new tools come into the consumer realm, also, of course, into the business realm. And I'm talking about generative AI, but of course, many other tools as well. What are you able to do now that maybe was not possible a few years ago?
Yeah, and Dan, I think that's also, that's also a fantastic element of technology, that what was just not possible like 3 or 4 years ago, now suddenly is within reach, very much possible. And that just opens up possibilities of what we can do for our associates and customers. That's the fun part. And you're absolutely right. I think even just 5 years ago, I'll just walk through 2 or 3 technologies.
Sure.
One of the things was migration to cloud and API-based technology stacks, and having them integrated into a particular cloud provider. That was a bit of a skill 5 years ago. And it may be at different places, but I'll tell you at Lowe, I think we are in a great position when it comes to just having our workloads deployed, whether it's cloud, our own data center. Back of every store, we have created a micro data center. And how do we remove all this friction from all our engineers to make sure that they can deploy anywhere they want to? And we have really mastered that. So I'm so happy to talk about that. But the other technologies that you talked about, we have more than 50 products that deploy artificial intelligence into production at scale. So this is not experiments or proof of concept. These are at scale solutions, and I feel like over the last 5 years, or even last 2 to 3 years, I'm seeing tremendous amount of development where it's becoming easier. And then leading up to that is generative AI, which you just brought up, Diane. And, last November when ChatGPT came out, I think it took the world by storm. And we have been experimenting and trying to figure out as to what does this technology mean to us. And I think it's fascinating. I feel like we can open up avenues. We are a people-first, technology-led company, and I feel like we can really open up avenues for both our customers and associates.
Seemantini, as you're talking about that and the fact that we were wowed as consumers, I've often wondered, were CIOs like yourself or CDIOs, were you wowed as well by ChatGPT, or did it really, and I'm using that, obviously that's one brand of generative AI, or was it just, did you see it coming? I mean, give me some sense as to how transformative it was in your own thinking about how you use these tools.
No, it absolutely wowed me. I mean, last November when we started when it came out, and I think I'll tell you what wowed me the most, Diane, because we knew that all these things were being worked upon and experimented by really big technology companies. I think one of the surprising thing was that, and which happens in technology way too often, so it should stop surprising us, but it was an entrant like OpenAI who said, "Hey, we'll take a chance. We will, uh, expose this service to our consumers and see where it goes." And we were all the beneficiaries of kind of working with it and trying to get answers to various questions. It wowed me many times about the questions I asked ChatGPT and the answers I got. I'll give you an example. I asked ChatGPT, when do I use the conventional type of AI, and when do I use generative AI? And it gave a really nice balanced answer, which was pretty cool. So there are
What
many
did it tell
experiences.
you? Anything you
You know,
gleaned advice wise you can give to us?
I think it was a really nice answer if my board was to ask me, or my boss were to ask me, my CEO were to ask me. I think it was a really nice answer for somebody who probably knows AI and knows generative AI, not at a great depth, but wants to get an answer. And I think that it was crafted very nicely. And it said to the effect that if you have just tremendous amount of data, if you want to do natural language processing, generative AI is a great solution for those problems. But if you have limited data, a lot of domain knowledge, a lot of business rules that are very, very crafted for yourself, for your own business, then what it calls analytical AI, or what we sometimes term it as the general conventional AI, is what you could use, was the answer. And I really like that, the way it had done classification of when can you use generative AI and when could you use
You know,
analytical AI.
it's interesting as you're talking, I'm thinking about the transition of the role itself, to the extent where certainly when I talked to CIOs, several years ago, it was very much and still is about cybersecurity. A lot of what I started with, the threats, the threat and also the gatekeeper, making sure that what's being used and brought into your ecosystem is safe, is efficient, etc. Now it feels like a lot of the role very much is also aligned with business development, transformation being less about necessarily cutting jobs, more about finding new opportunities. That's my observation just from afar. Tell me how you think the role has changed for yourself and others.
Diane, and I am going back a little bit in the history, and I'm dating myself by doing so, but I'll tell you, like even 15, 20 years ago, I mean, CIOs generally used to be somebody plucked out of another field and appointed as a CIO. Like, you could have had a financial background, general management background. You could be an MBA without any, necessarily technology background. And then you were put in these roles because there were a lot of buying of the software, making sure, technology was really more like a enabling function or a behind the scenes kind of background function. And I think those roles at that time made sense. There weren't many technologies available. In-house development was really expensive. I mean, if you, Diane, I do remember in my early days, like buying CDs from Microsoft, paying for those and doing Visual C++ programming, right? And everything was licensed. There was no open source. There was no cloud. And then lots of different things happened, Diane. And one of the things that happened is the amount of technology transformation that happened in retail. So Diane, I think for last 10 years or so, what I'm observing is there has been a sea change, not just in retail, but industries across, where there is a realization that you really need core skill set of technology to manage the technology function of a chief digital officer, chief information officer, chief technology officer. There are a couple of different titles. And I feel like I don't necessarily look at my job as a gatekeeper at all, though prioritization is really important and you can't be doing everything for everybody, and you need to be making sure that your investments are deployed to right places. But Diane, my job is really to grow the business of Lowe's. I have the P&L responsibility for Lowe's.com. So I absolutely play that role for Lowe's.com. But for rest of Lowe's also, I look at my job more about growing the business, having just delightful, wonderful experiences for our associates and customers, removing all the friction, and less about gatekeeping or less about, controlling.
You talk about priorities. Let's talk about some of those priorities right now, because life is about hard choices. There's only so much money. What are you prioritizing? What are you doubling down on, and what are you perhaps spending less on?
Yeah. So Diane, we spend a really, really healthy amount in Lowe's on technology because we just understand. I mean, more than me, Marvin Ellison, our CEO, my boss, is a true believer in technology. Has always said that, hey, all great retailers have a few things in common, and one of them, very important one, is technology. So I haven't had to convince Marvin that, hey, we should invest in technology. He's the one who always says that we should invest in technology and does so. So we have been very fortunate at Lowe's that we didn't have to convince anybody. Having said that, any amount of money given to you is always limited, and you always have to make choices. And with that, Diane, I think we have structured ourselves in product teams, and we have structured ourselves around OKRs. So every product team has something called as objectives and key results, and all the objectives and key results are around associate or customer satisfaction. So we measure it by there are various measures, and we likelihood to recommend is one of our big measures to measure as to if we are doing the right things for associates and customers. And then of course there are goals around number of unique users, how often they come to Lowe's or Lowe's.com, app downloads, how our sales and margin objectives being met. So these are all the objectives.
So you're focused on basically enhancing the customer experience right now through these technologies. Let's talk about some of the challenges. Earlier this year, you talked about how you're addressing the challenge of theft, which perhaps is less, I don't even know if it's less of a problem for Lowe's and some of the, drugstores, et cetera, we've seen in the nation. But what are the new tools there, and how are you trying to get out ahead of especially organized retail theft?
Yeah. So organized retail theft is really a problem, Diane. I think in Lowe's, what we have done is through our investment, and we have just a tremendous team which does a really nice job of making sure that they are called asset protection, and they do a really nice job of monitoring, operating, and making sure that they are monitoring across our 1,700 stores, also digital fraud, and they make sure that it is a non-event from a customer experience or associate experience perspective. But it is hard work, frankly, in today's environment. And Diane, what we have done is it's kind of like combination of people, process, and technology. Technology does play an important role along with the asset protection team, which is all about people and process. And what we have done, Diane, is a combination of technologies which are in store. They are also looking at the order flow and inspecting the order flow from a digital fraud perspective. But in-store physical environment, just making sure that we have, through visual means in our parking lots, just enough intelligence to tell us if we have a situation which needs to be observed and controlled. Controlling our associate and customer experience is most important to us, and that's what we are doing. We also came up with something called as Project Unlock. I'm not sure if you have heard about it, but
I have.
So we are experimenting, and we are working with various of our partners to see if we can, implement a technology which is RFID based, and we are trying to figure out if we can implement that technology without taking away anything from customers or associates, and at the same time deterring theft. So this will be as simple as you have to pay for a tool before you leave the store anyways. You're used to it, you take it for granted. So that process of scanning for payment would make sure that your tool is unlocked and you're able to use it.
Almost like a phone or a gift card, right? You can't use it unless it's been activated. So, no, that I think that makes a lot of sense. So let me ask a bit more about the cybersecurity environment and less about maybe the specifics of Lowe's, but also you've worked across a number of different industries, companies. What have you learned in terms of the advice that you have right now? Are there new threats that are emerging, or is it just really new tools for the same old threats?
Diane, I think, first of all, I'll just give you some background. I mean, I think, the technologies which are so good for making sure that we are giving a great associate and customer experiences, those same technologies are available to bad actors, and they are using them to launch attacks. So whether launching an attack by using the power of any cloud, or for example, anonymizing services. So it's very difficult to tell where the attack is coming from. Or the fact is that with all this cryptocurrency, nothing can be traced back to anybody, and that all this environment has, helped. All these technologies can be used for the good. It can be used by the bad actors, and that's what we are seeing. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, though, I think, Dan, to your point, we have to continue to evolve, because bad actors, in a very organized fashion, are continuing to evolve in technology, in their maturity, in how to carry out these attacks. So it is absolutely imperative for all Fortune 500 and all corporations, for that matter, to just be always in a state of readiness, always continue to assess threat, and always be making sure that we have the right defenses in order to make sure that we are, we are not taking away anything from the customer and associate experiences. Lately what we have seen is that these actors have been deploying a combination of tactics, such as social engineering plus the cyber attack and stuff. So I think they are continuing to be creative, and I feel like the corporations just continue to stay one step ahead of them.
I want to switch a bit to the personal to end off. In terms of your own career, I don't know what you wanted to be when you grew up, when you went into college, but here you are in a C-suite leadership position at a global company. Talk a little bit about what motivated you in terms of what you studied and what was formative along the way. Let's start with what you wanted to be when you grew up.
So, Diane, I think I always loved math and science, and I think it's just, I wish I could give you a really very nice answer, but the fact is, I just felt like there was so much logic in math and science that you didn't have to remember too much. If you knew how to, it was like solving puzzles for me. And if you knew how to do it, then you didn't have to stay up late into the night trying to read up stuff right before your exam. You could be out and about playing. As a kid, I always did that, and still go ahead and do pretty well in all these subjects. I think they naturally came to me, and then I chose engineering as my profession. I also feel like, though these topics came naturally to me, Diane, I mean, all of us know in all our professions that you have to put in your 10,000 hours, and you have to. So I've spent countless hours trying to keep up with technology, just making sure that I really understand as technology advances. And so it's been hard work as well. So I had never, if you had asked me 20, 25 years ago that, hey, do you want to become a CIO? I don't think I had these fixed ideas, but leadership is something that has always attracted me. I felt like this is something that you could never wake up in the morning and say, I think I got it. It's an evolving journey. There is a new problem every day. And I think that fascinates me, and that brings me where I am today.
Excellent. Well, and obviously the impact you can have too. Any advice to other leaders or even consumers as we look into 2024? What's on your radar you'd like to put on ours?
Yeah, I think what my advice would be, Diane, that the technologies that we are working with right now, For example, even take generative AI as an example. I think these technologies can be very powerful. I also want to make sure that as leaders, we don't die a death of 1,000 pilots. What I mean to say is some of these technologies are relatively easy to pilot, and then they get fairly complex as you try to put something of scale in production. And I feel like being aware of it from the very beginning and just making sure that finally we are in the business of bringing value to our customers and associates, and just focusing on that and asking yourself that question every morning you wake up is, are you bringing value to your customers and associates with new technology, with these new experiments and explorations? And as long as we keep that as a North Star, that we are here to improve the experience for our teams, for our customers, for our associates, I feel like we could be on the right path and making progress.
Great advice, not just the tool, but what the tool is being used for. Thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to continuing the conversation and wish you a happy new year.
You too, Diane. Happy holidays.